It's the midweek edition of Breakfast Central, and we're incredibly delighted that you chose to start your morning with us. Thank you for riding with us all through the week. We promise that today's show is going to be even better than the other two that we've had this week. I am Olive Emodi, and
She's right. She's right.
Yeah.
It's going to be better.
Yeah.
I'm Benga Aborowa, and every day we're getting better and better. And just to serve you, esteemed viewers, we love you so much. Without you, we are not here.
Why are we here?
It's not you, it's us. No, or how do you say? Yeah, but you get the message. Welcome.
It's not you, it's me.
It's me.
Yes. Welcome to Breakfast Central, where we serve you the best of morning conversations, insightful discussions, analysis. And today, yes, we have a lot to speak about. You know, Nigeria is adding. I mean, if the Senate does approve, we will be owing more, but the conversations are around what will it be used for, is it going to spur development and things like that. But when we get there, you know what we're talking about. I'm Benga Aborowa, welcome to Breakfast Central.
And I'm Joe Hansen, welcoming you to Breakfast Central as well. It's midweek, like they say, it's Hump Wednesday. But here on Breakfast Central, our focus, as usual, is on the latest stories that concern you, your family, and would have a strong impact on your decision making, especially when it comes to decisions that you have to take for yourselves and for your families. But then again, Benga has also started by highlighting the fact that the president is about to borrow. I did see the video. I saw the video yesterday, and I'm sure you guys also did, where the Senate president was reading out the amount, and he was taking his time to read it. While he was doing that, there were pauses because there was a Chinese yuan, and then it was also borrowing in another, domination and so on, pounds. And if you look at every single thing, like you also rightly said, the comment section was one funny place to go to yesterday. People were saying, oh wait, was it a strategy of paying off so you can borrow
exactly, because we just cleared our IMF.
Exactly. Debt. So yes. It's a whole lot of conversation.
And it's a huge amount, bro.
It's not a lot. It's not small money. Like we always say, borrowing is not such a bad thing. It is first.
Yeah.
What is the borrowing for? Secondly, what is the guarantee for the repayment of the borrowing? Are there any hidden clauses that Nigerians need to be aware of that is powering this borrowing? And then these are the conversations I'm hoping to explore. But before we get into the conversations, first of all, happy Boxing Day to the children. Happy Children's Day, Boxing Day.
I don't understand. What's that one?
You know how usually after Christmas, day after Christmas is like Boxing Day. So children, I'm hoping that all the children got gifts. So today is the Boxing Day of the Children's Day. So that they're unwrapping their gifts.
Kids don't normally get gifts on Children's Day, but it was nice of News Central to give the fantastic kids that joined us yesterday gifts, and I'm sure they will always remember yesterday. It will be etched in their memories.
It's a core memory for them that they wouldn't forget.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking about Children's Day, something had happened yesterday in the live video that we'll be talking about, because it's quite contradictory that we're also celebrating children and talking about the health, wellness, and prevention of child or sexual abuse, that someone on the other hand is going on Instagram Live to outrightly say that he is abusing, or he abused a 15-year-old girl. This is supposed to be someone that has become a public figure, and the reactions have been very, very terrible. But maybe we'll come back to that conversation, or we'll wrap up with that conversation, because it sort of leaves a sour taste on the mouth. Let's begin with the one in Onitsha.
Absolutely. Let's talk about what is going on between one who has, all of a sudden become a very strong activist, especially in this part of Nigeria. NAFDAC has come out to defend itself from allegations that were made just a few days ago. Well, in case you have not been following the story, you recall that NAFDAC had gone to a very popular market, of course, in the southeast, to ensure that they destroyed, shops. They also apprehended. They also did all they could. Yes, all traders or people in quotes who deal in selling fake drugs. It's a very, very tough situation that they had to take, and they did it, and they received plaudits from Nigerians who said, great job, well done. However, after that was done, a story came up where the activist, very dark man, decided to take a trip down to the southeast, and then found out that some of the marketers in quotes or maybe we wouldn't call it, we want to call it drug sellers, we want to call it those who deal on medication.
Medication, yeah.
Yes. Had their shops locked up, and they were not in any way part of those who sell or deal on fake drugs or medications. However, he also noticed that they were told individually to come through to NAFDAC and make XYZ payment of 700,000 naira. And he felt that was wrong. If you have been able to breach into a market and you caught some persons dealing on fake drugs, then it's all right for you to apprehend them, arrest them, sentence, take them to court, and so on, but not turning around and coming back to others who were clean, in quotes, and telling them, okay, regardless of whether you were clean or not, come and pay 700,000.
That's extortion.
Exactly.
Right.
Just so many have said it's extortion, but he made these claims, and many were shocked. I was equally shocked. Like, okay, why would NAFDAC do that? Is NAFDAC now the law? Is NAFDAC now the judge in this situation? Are you not supposed to hand over the perpetrators to the system so that they can handle them, possibly try them in court and so on and so forth? But then NAFDAC decided to be the judge and the jury. Aside from apprehending these ones, they also requested that they make XYZ amount.
They're saying it's not them. I mean, NAFDAC's explanation is that it's a federal gazette. But we'll come back to look at it. Let's now take a look at the video where Martin Ose, popularly known as Very Dark Man, was speaking so strongly against NAFDAC and their actions in Ogbogu, the largest open drug market in Africa. Let's take a look.
All right, so to the DG of NAFDAC, Professor Moji Christiana Adeyeye, it's possible that you might be the next person to kidnap me, because you know Nigeria now, if you talk, they kidnap you. Do you understand? But madam, this what is happening now with your office. I can't keep quiet. You people have turned extortionists and you people have turned criminals in this our Nigeria. Do you understand? And I expect well-meaning Nigerians to also put mouth in this matter, because very, very soon, if you not keep quiet, you will buy Panadol for 15,000 naira. I promise you. I promise you. NAFDAC have turned extortionists and thieves overnight. And I don't know why. If you want to generate money for the government, we have oil. We have a lot of mineral resources. Go and bring them out and use it to make money. Why are you people extorting these traders? Do you understand? You people have become thieves. And after this video now, we go write petition. Do you understand? Write petition to EFCC. I wanted to engineer them that we should break all the padlock when NAFDAC don't put. But that's taking laws into our hands. So we'll give it to EFCC to do the needful and investigate this thievery and this extortion that is going on in Ogbogu market in Onitsha. Now, NAFDAC, again, I will rephrase. You are currently collecting 700,000 naira per shop in Ogbogu market, where they sell medicines in Ogbogu per shop. The shops there is over 5,000 shops. So you are expected to make over 3.5 billion so far. That's if you collect from everybody. But we are not going to let you people do that.
That sort of gives a summary of what's happening in Ogbogu market, which is one of the largest open drug markets in Africa. In February, NAFDAC had carried out a sting operation and found out that a number of people were trafficking in illicit medication. They were repackaging expired drugs and all of that. I think there were about 4,000 arrests or shops that had been closed. And now the reports have it that they're being asked to pay 700,000 naira to reopen their shop. But NAFDAC has given an explanation, and I am going to read what their explanation is. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control has defended the administrative charges recently imposed on traders at the Onitsha Bridge head drug market, including a controversial 700,000 naira fee. And then they go on to say that the fees are federal government approved and were imposed after uncovering massive contraventions in Onitsha and other open drug markets. They, of course, gave this clarification, and then they went to do a further breakdown. They said the initial sum that was meant to be paid was an investigative charge of 5 million naira, reduced to 200,000 naira after pleas for sales of unregistered products. Then there was another one of an investigative charge of 2 million naira for violations of good storage and distribution practices, which was then reduced to 500,000 after further appeal. So what this further means is that they ought to have paid 7 million naira fine, but after plenty abeg, it has now been reduced to 700,000 naira. They go ahead to say that these penalties are officially gazetted charges and were applied fairly across the affected markets. They, of course, have said that they remain committed to safeguarding public health, and this is a statement by Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, the Director General of NAFDAC.
So I'm going to start by clapping.
So
the long story short is these are fines that are paid for violating the law.
So yes, that's what I need to confirm.
Yes.
And I don't want to speak when I don't have 100% of the facts.
Okay.
What I will say is we cannot downplay the importance of thoroughly investigating drug offenders.
Yeah, it's a life and death matter.
Exactly, because we know Eric Arubaye, who allegedly died from taking expired medication.
Yeah.
There have been times when I have bought medication from a pharmacy,
even
and I don't even know. To be honest, a number of us are not so careful to always check expiry date, and I don't know what made me check the expiry date, and I found out that it was expired. Exactly what a number of them were doing in Onitsha. They were changing the dates, they were repackaging it, and imagine what that would do. How that is going to kill thousands of people who are dependent. This is one of the largest open drug markets in Africa, so people are always going there to get drugs. So first of all, I think it's important the work that NAFDAC is doing in exposing these fraudulent people. That's one. Two, I need to be sure that the levies are not imposed on everyone. That it is the people who committed these offences, the violators that have the levies imposed on them. If it is the violators that have the levies imposed on them, I cannot speak for that. I cannot speak to that.
Why do you have? I mean, this is a life and death matter. Somebody is clearly. It depends on the particular breach, but if you're found to be selling expired drugs, I think you should lose your license for a period of time, or the penalty should be harsher.
I don't even think if they should even give them opportunity to reopen a store.
Exactly. Are you a revenue generation agency? Why are you so interested in money? You could just pay 700,000, and then the next batch you bring in
more expired drugs and package it
That's
again.
what they are trying to. That's what it looks like. Like, okay, just pay this money and then I'll look the other way, because they're not going to be doing raids every other week.
No.
And they need to look at a way to deal with this issue holistically, and also from the source, the Nigerian customs. They come in through our borders. They come in through ships. They come in through airports. They need to tackle at source and also prevent these things. Instead of this is very crude and very crude and pedestrian for you to just go to shops. There should be more intellectual or smarter ways of doing things. And then at the end of the day, this person has committed an offense, and what you're interested in is just bring this money,
yes.
Bring money.
To ask what I've said, in summary, I will never be in support of people selling illicit drugs, selling fake drugs, expired drugs, or repackaging medicine, by changing the expiry date. However, I would say if people are found selling these expired drugs and using it as a business, these people should be arrested and apprehended, and they should be made to face the law. I'm not quite sure about giving them levies and allowing them reopen their shop, because that's a menace to the society. If you're charging somebody and telling the person that they can pay 700,000 naira and then they can restart their business.
The fine should be for minor infractions.
Yes, for minor, not something as major as this. However, I also need to be certain that this is not a levy that has been imposed on innocent people. Because if they are innocent, because those are part of the arguments we're hearing. If there are innocent people who, this is an open call to the marketers in Ogbogu Market, please reach out to us, tweet at us at News Central TV, or respond to this video. If there are people that have been innocently affected, who were not, they had no infractions in this regard, and then they've been fined a levy just by virtue of being in that market, then that's injustice, that's unfair, and NAFDAC needs to do better. Really.
That I think, taking it from just the statement you made, I think that's where the bone of contention lies. They're saying that the innocent ones, that's what Very Dark Man had said in one of his videos, that even the innocent one, everybody, and doing the calculation, you could see about 3-point-something billion, that's what it's going to look like. But I was clapping initially, and I was clapping because I like the speed in which NAFDAC responded, and that's how it should be. A government parastatal body, ministry, whatever, whenever there's an allegation against or towards you, then you should be able to come out and speak. And that explanation also shows, it said it's been gazetted, it's there. So it means that it is also enshrined one way or the other in their processes of carrying out their job. However, I am worried that the monies was further reduced to 700,000 naira. I'm worried because if someone who has killed, in quotes, persons, fellow humans, Nigerians, by selling fake drugs, and they've died, are you trying to tell me that he's just going to pay that little money? What do you think he would do? Like Bengas also
Exactly.
he will get back
What's
with the program.
700,000?
He will get back.
There's a reason
business.
why it was 5 million in the first place.
Leave it there.
Unless you're not sure of the investigation you did, that's why you're reducing it.
Exactly.
Unless your investigation was arbitrary.
That's it. So there's a lot to sort out. There's a lot to look at. First, I think like we've highlighted here, if they're watching, feel free to get back to us. I mean, tweet us, let us know if it also involves those who were not partaking in this illegal act. And then secondly, NAFDAC needs to fully clarify this entire thing. I mean, they've released a press statement. We like it. We love the way it's done. But then again, let's.
So that's why I'm saying that it's important for us to also, have the people who are directly affected reach out to us as well, so we can get a fuller picture. But then again, if truly NAFDAC has imposed this fee for everyone in the market, then that's terrible. That should be condemned and criticized. Not in this economy where people are trying to make ends meet, and it feels like policies are trying to stifle people.
They're also imposing that bill because you've been dealing with medications in that market. You are aware of your neighbor who's also selling fake.
But what's the proof that I'm aware?
Well,
I'm doing my business.
We're not supposed to be snitches.
Let's move on.
Let's move on to another conversation. Now, yesterday we brought you a report about the Ido Bridge, and we had our correspondent Israel Favour, who was right at the bridge talking about how this bridge had been demolished because the Minister of Works had given notice to them, asking them to evacuate the bridge. The bridge is not meant to be a place where they're doing buying and selling and businesses. It will turn out that a certain landlord has collected rent under that bridge to the tune of 32 million naira.
Very brave landlord.
Did I not? Did I not say it?
32.2.
Yes,
Let me not remove that point
that day.
But you would have expected this amount.
I said it here that day. I said there's a landlord not just a landlord. There's an agent,
and there are people.
And there's a company,
and there's no enforcement covering.
They will give you receipt,
and there's no enforcement covering for that landlord.
Now they will give you receipt. They will even give you contract that you will sign, and they will charge you for power. You will pay for sanitation.
So how did the landlord come about owning government property? Or how would he pitch to his prospective clients?
Who gets Gragra Pass? The Agbo that has the
I got here in 1972. Exactly. I was here when they built this bridge.
And just to mention that this video, this investigation was carried out by The Guardian. The Guardian brings this report about the landlord that has made 32.2 million yearly from rent under Ido Bridge. We did cover the demolition of the bridge.
This is the height of lawlessness.
Look at the rubble.
How lawless can
look at the rubble. Look at. You know what? Now, if you're going to look at this holistically, one, the agents that have been perpetrating this entire act, where are they now? This is my problem.
Beings. They need to.
This is my problem. This is where I have a problem. I have a problem with this. We talk, we show action. At the end of the day, action leads to no benefit or profit or whatever. So, well done to the Minister of Works, Engineer David Umahi. We can see him. We like his actions whenever he takes it. Very good. And we can see that this is a very good action, because what would happen one day on this bridge would continue to live with us for the rest of our lives.
He will shock you.
So now he's stopping it. However, don't forget that. Anyway, let's watch the minister as he spoke.
Urgency to protect.
We came with a number of bridge experts, because this bridge was borne down by people that have been occupying under the bridge. They even made a block walls, and all kinds of goods are being sold under the bridge. They have converted under the bridge, like warehouses, shops, and living accommodation. And that's why the bridge has been totally burned down. There is no going back in thorough examination of this Ido Bridge. You can see at the underpass that vehicles also hit the bridge, and the beams are damaged.
The integrity of the bridge. He's speaking on the engineering side of it. The integrity has been compromised. They have to do repair works. Even the underpass, some of those trucks that are not the height, they just managed to squeeze through. He talked about rental. I mean, they just turned that bridge to a mixed development. It's a mini mall. You have accommodation, you have commercial, and I don't know why he's not focused, or maybe somebody else would deal with that. Law enforcement and dealing with impunity so that it will not repeat itself again. He's talking about repairing it and all of that. People need to be answerable for breaking the law. That man that collected rent, he needs to know who gave him cover, who are the perpetrators, and all of that. He's not a ghost, he's a Nigerian citizen.
Thank you. I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head regarding this story.
The agents are there. You can get them. You have receipts when you pay. Use the receipts to trace them.
If they receipt or no receipt, if they want to trace them, they can trace them. Anybody can be found.
Guess what, Benga? We'll discover another place, another bridge. Short, after years, they will go back there.
Is it a sensitization issue, Olive, that, or is it a mentality?
I think it's all
that
of
government property
is our property.
It's our property. When you're in government, you can eat. It's our turn to eat.
So I think it's a mentality, and then there's impunity that abounds. Because again, like you both have mentioned, there haven't been strong punitive measures that have made the government stance clear on certain actions. It's why even when buildings keep collapsing, we still see people getting permits to do one story and then building two. Why? Because they haven't seen strong measures. They haven't seen strong punitive measures that send people to jail. Send the developer and the person, the surveyor and everybody in charge of that project to jail because this building collapsed and because it proves that they were negligent. So until we start making examples of people, a number of these scenarios will keep repeating themselves. Speaking of making examples, our third story was one that I made mention of at the start of the show when I talked about Children's Day and how unfortunately a public figure went on Instagram Live and made a couple of very shocking revelations. Whilst talking about how he cannot work for anybody, he doesn't want to work for anybody. He talked about serving people and certain industries being very demeaning. He didn't use those exact words, but he talked about people in the hospitality sector, restaurants, he can't do any of that. And then he says, imagine asking a grown man to come and change bed sheets. And he then inferred in the statement that he had, it's even hard for me to say, he had violated a 15-year-old girl, like he had been with a 15-year-old girl who bled because she's a virgin. And when I saw the video, I was in shock. That was my first reaction. Social media has, of course, started to react to it. A number of people have called him out. One of them is Daddy Freeze, who has asked him to apologize. First of all, I don't even see why he should apologize, because this is not a situation of apology. You don't apologize for crimes. He has committed a crime. If you slept with a 15-year-old girl, if you admit to having slept with a 15-year-old girl, then you have abused her. That is rape. A 15-year-old girl does not have the power to give consent in this scenario. And now there are people who then dug out an old video of him where he got into an altercation with a woman who alleged that he abused a 16-year-old girl. Let's take a look. This is an old video that came out as a result of this.
Their hand in my window. Will I be wrong?
A 16-year-old girl. You want to start messaging a 16-year-old girl? My children are dead. You want to start talking? My children are come here. Come here. Come here.
You see?
Come here.
You see now?
You
see now? You see what they're doing?
Okay, no, okay.
You see?
You carry knife.
Leave my things alone. Leave my things alone.
Now, that's an allegation. The video came up. Because it's social media season, people forget that whatever you do, it stays on the internet. It doesn't completely go away. So because he has volunteered information about having been intimate with a 15-year-old girl, people have started to dig out evidence about him. Lagos State government has, of course, swung into action and said that he's on the probe, and they have released a report. The Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, they say they are aware of the disturbing video currently circulating online, in which a popular entertainer allegedly admits to engaging in unlawful sexual activity with a minor. While the individual in question did not specify the location of the incident during the Instagram live session, we must clarify that the DSVA's jurisdiction is limited to Lagos State. In view of the above, and in line with our commitment to justice, we have escalated the situation to the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. The Lagos State government reaffirms our zero-tolerance stance against all forms of sexual and gender-based violence and will continue to advocate for accountability and the protection of every Nigerian child. And they go ahead to share contact details if you have anyone who, if you have any information that may help, 08000-333-333, or if you want to reach out to NAPTIP, send an email to info@naptip.gov.ng or send a text to 070-300000203.
Well, I want to believe that there are two sides to this story. The first is that there is a, what would I call it? There has been a trace pointing towards a constant behavior from this individual. And for them to dig up the old video where the mother came with the daughter and alleged in that video that the age, she's a child and so on, and he tried to defend himself and saying something else, I would not want to use that video as a clear evidence, despite the fact that we can see that there's a trace. I wouldn't want to use that. So we'll just document it. The other aspect is, it could be that it's for clout, and being in quotes, maybe high, intoxicated, or allegedly being stupid at a certain point. You feel that if you call a certain age, it shows that you are still in the game. Why am I saying this? Psychologically, most men believe that when they hype themselves, that no matter how old they are, irresponsible men believe that, oh, I can get the young girl. It doesn't matter if I'm old. And you say something in quotes, stupid. I think that's another reason.
I kind of get your point.
Yeah, but if you add both of them together.
Because, we don't know the facts of the matter.
Yeah,
but we
absolutely.
could, like he rightly said, we could induce a certain behavioral pattern from this individual that has a tendency for going for underage girls, from the accusations that his neighbors made that was sending soliciting messages. To their, I believe, house girl or daughter. I'm not sure what the situation is. But looking at the facts of this current issue, the Lagos State Domestic Violence Agency Against Sexual and Domestic Violence did a great job by escalating to NAPTIP because you can't tell the location of
where it happened in the east.
Video was made. However, following what Joe just mentioned, it's irresponsible of him, even if somebody doesn't come out to file charges or say, look, I was the victim in this situation, but because of the controversy this has generated, the amount of public interest is generated and debate, he would really learn his lessons. This is somebody that claimed to have grown up in the United States. Does he think this sort of things are tolerated?
Make this kind of joke in America.
There's zero tolerance for this sort of joke. So I'm happy that we invite him for questioning. I'm happy everybody's talking about this, so he will learn his lessons. Even when you're joking, there are certain lines you don't cross. He will never do this again.
He has spoken with such confidence that seems to power whatever he said, meaning that he might actually have been speaking the truth about what he did. But in the event that this was clout, it is such a terrible thing to use for clout. And I'm hoping that content creators learn that there are certain lines you don't cross. You don't make a joke about rape, sexual assault. This is not the first time. We've even seen in situations where, and I'm not in any way saying this is clout, because for all I know, for all intent and purposes, if he admitted to have been with a 15-year-old woman, a 15-year-old girl, then he was with a 15-year-old girl. And just to mention, for those who will say, well, she may have wanted it, she may have given him consent. No. According to our laws, an underaged child, male or female, cannot give you consent. So if you sleep with an underage child, you have taken advantage of them, it can be categorized as rape. Let the law do its course, or let the law take its course.
A 15-year-old is a teenager.
A child. She's a child.
Yeah, you can't be bragging of such and think you're chasing clout. Anyway, that's all we're going to take on Wake Up Conversations this morning. Let's head straight to our very, very interesting 3 hours full stretch programming as we bring to you the top stories for today on Breakfast Central. Today on Breakfast Central, here we will be looking at the big stories. President Tinubu seeks approval for loans and pension bond. We'll talk about that story and still talking about the president He orders review of Child Rights Act. I hope the story we just had and wake-up conversation will not be the first scapegoats to feel it. President Tinubu arrives Lagos to commission several projects. Get ready. If you're bracing up for heading to the island, you might want to have a rethink. Family of kidnapped 12-year-old alleged police cover-up. We have an insight into that story again, and then the front pages of the newspapers.
President of the Nigerian Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, has called on Nigerian children to stay away from social vices and uphold values that promote the image of the country. He made the remarks after a motion by a senator representing the Federal Capital Territory, Senator Ireti Kingibe, who emphasized the importance of improving the welfare of and protecting children across the country.
The day's activities began outside the chambers, where the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, led members of the upper legislative chamber through a welcoming crowd of school children ahead of the plenary session. During plenary, Senator Ireti Kingibe raised a motion highlighting the urgent need to reaffirm national commitment to the protection, education and development of children.
Introduce and implement National Skills for Children initiative targeting basic ICT literacy, craft entrepreneurship, creative arts and problem-solving skills starting from primary schools.
In a symbolic gesture, the Senate suspended Order 12 of its rules to allow the children access the hallowed chambers to observe the session. Senate President Akpabio described children as the leaders of tomorrow and reaffirmed the commitment of the National Assembly to enact laws that ensure the protection and well-being of every Nigerian child.
We urge you to dream big, work hard, and never give up on your aspirations. Our prayer is that you will not relate with other children who are into vices such as drugs, so that it will not lead you into criminality and will cut short your lives. So we want you to grow up to become great leaders of tomorrow. That is our prayer for you. Can you all shout amen?
In response, a representative of the visiting students expressed gratitude to the Senate for the opportunity to witness the legislative proceedings firsthand.
We, the Nigerian children, wish to thank Your Excellency most sincerely for providing the resources and veiling us the opportunity to participate with my fellow uncommon children to celebrate this year's Children's Day Fund Fair celebration in the National Assembly.
The lawmakers called on parents, educators, and government agencies, among other stakeholders, to renew their commitment to building a safer and more inclusive society for every Nigerian child. In Abuja for News Central, Sagir Bryan.
Very interesting one there to see the children just having a feel of legislative activities. We look forward to seeing them as future lawmakers, and we hope that they'll do much better. And when it's their time, we will not call them rubber stamp in their own time.
Yes, hopefully. I remember having a conversation on radio about corporate, what's that?
Corporate social responsibility.
No, corporal punishment, yes, when you beat kids. And, I had callers, older callers called in and said, that's what made me who I am today. They flogged me, they taught me discipline. And I was against corporal punishment, because you only beat animals. There's a way you could talk to children and they'll understand. And we also need to know that a 5-year-old's brain is not fully developed. So when you force them to do certain things. And my response to the callers was, your generation that they flog, is it not you that made Nigeria what it is today? If that flogging really worked, it would have translated to better leadership and a better country. Exactly.
That's a salient point there, truly. Because if you were really flogged, you would have been in check.
Exactly.
Okay, you know what? Let's move on to
you'd
another
have left us with a Switzerland.
Let's talk about
country.
Let's move on from lawmakers and the future of Nigeria to talk about the presidency. President Bola Tinubu has formally requested the National Assembly's approval of a $21.5 billion external loan and a 758 billion naira pension bond. This request, submitted through multiple letters to the Senate and the House of Representatives, aims to fund critical infrastructure projects and clear outstanding pension liabilities.
Now, according to the President's proposal, the loan will be directed towards transportation, healthcare, and other priority sectors. But this financial move has raised several questions and concerns as to why Nigeria needs another massive loan, especially when the country had just recently cleared its IMF loan, and how would this impact our already strained economy? Now, join us this morning for this discussion is the partner and head of research at SBM Intelligence, Ikemesit Effiong. One welcome to you, Mr. Effiong, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Now, as we speak this morning of the 28th of May 2025, Nigeria's public debt stock already exceeds 87 trillion naira. Will this new loan stimulate development, or would we be in the debt trap of endless cycle of borrowing? Do we need it at this time, basically?
Well, I mean, Nigeria is something of a precarious chicken and egg situation when it comes to its public finances. On the one hand, right, public debt, the total stock, right, of the country's debt, as you said, right, has increased dramatically, right. So we're in a situation now, like you said, where we have 87 trillion naira. For context, when we returned back to democratic rule in 1999, our total debt stock, which we needed, if you remember, Paris Club and we need in order to overcome, was 3.5, the equivalent of 3.5 trillion naira in today's naira, right? So we have a situation where our debt has increased more than 1,000%, the total stock, right, in 25 years. On the other hand, Nigeria is dealing with a situation now where the productive capacity of the economy is simply not enough to fund the development priorities of government. You look at capital infrastructure. You also have recurrent expenditure commitments, right? The size of the federal. So we also have a situation where the size of governance, right, especially at the federal level, has also significantly increased. And you have a situation where, I know we're just talking about the National Assembly, lawmakers are continuing to tackle new agencies, new sort of regulatory priorities, and all of these require money in order to execute. And so we are sort of in this situation where, oil revenue, which is the primary means through which we still earn foreign exchange, even in the year of our Lord 2025, isn't keeping up with sort of our development priorities, and other aspects of the economy are simply, not productive enough, especially from a foreign currency revenue standpoint, right, to make up the shortfall. Therefore, we are in this situation where we have to borrow, right, and we've been borrowing exponentially, especially over the last this present administration, but certainly, under the last administration. Now, do we need $21.5 billion, right, in a budgetary year, essentially, to meet up that shortfall? That's very, very debatable, right, from my standpoint. The government itself projected that this year in 2025, it would need to borrow 16 trillion naira in order to make the 2025 budget work. We have now got into a situation where the federal, where the federal executive is asking for multiples of that amount, and the details as to how it is going to deploy those priorities, right, have not been made public. The letter to the National Assembly seems to be relatively thin on details in that respect, and so there is the obvious question that arises, which would be, where will a lot of these borrowings be channeled? I know, for example, there were conversations earlier in the year around borrowing to, for example, conduct the national census. This is supposed to be a census year, but the government was looking at, I think, 100 billion naira or something just for that alone, right? So there are a lot of questions. We can have conversations around what the exact number should be, how it is going to impact, right, our financial commitments going forward, right, and the likes. But certainly the headline number of $21.5 billion is very eye-popping, even considering the fact that, we've been borrowing a lot more over the last 8 to 10 years. And, and questions are now being asked around the sustainability of our debt servicing and our debt commitments overall.
Right. I mean, you just alluded to a well-known fact that borrowing is not new. We have been doing a lot of borrowing. The concerns, again, would be where will these monies, what will they be allocated to? You've just talked about census. So the question is, how much of these funds will generally reach the key projects, and how much will be lost to mismanagement and corruption?
I think that's the most important question, right? If people were sure that a lot of these resources will be channeled towards the urgent developmental priorities that Nigeria has, you think health, you think education, you think just the provision of social services in general, you think infrastructure development, there are some big ticket infrastructure projects that this current administration has committed to and ostensibly is committed to delivering, then maybe the argument for certainly a short-term increase in debt, in the overall debt pile, but just generally in our borrowing posture would be somewhat defensible. You also have a situation about how costly this will be going forward. I mean, right now, but going forward. So let's break that down a little bit. First and foremost, this is not the most advantageous time to be taking on new debt for many countries around the world, but especially for developing countries and countries with an economic profile like Nigeria. Because of the current global economic situation, right, investors are charging essentially more interest. They're requiring more interest in order to advance, right, credit to countries all over the world. Countries, right, are in premium that exists for practically every country out there when it comes to borrowing. So in relative terms, we'll be borrowing at relatively expensive rates. Now, the letter from the Federal Executive to the National Assembly does break down the fact that some of these borrowings will be fulfilled by domestic investors, and then some will be fulfilled by foreign investors. And I think there's a breakdown around different around borrowings in different currencies. So we'll be borrowing in USD, we'll be borrowing in pounds, we'll be borrowing in euros, we'll even be borrowing in Japanese yen apparently. So there's going to be a bit of a spread, and all of those will come at different interest rates. But the question still remains, whatever interest rates, right, will be provided, and maybe the debt management office will do some interest rate shopping to ensure that we borrow at as reasonable a rate as we can find. The overall level of interest rate borrowing will still be elevated and significant compared to what we've seen, right, in the last couple of years. That's the first part. The second part would be, we might have a situation, considering the sheer pile of debt that we want to take on at the same time, that at some point in the near to medium term future, we may need to refinance. And typically refinancing, it can occur at lower interest rates than when you initially borrowed, but the global economy, and especially Nigeria's economy, does not have the same carrying capacity as it does now. In the next 2 to 3 years, the net effect of that could be that debt, the overall debt file will be more expensive to service. And we've seen that with our debt servicing costs. In 2018, right, it cost us about 1.8 trillion naira, right, in debt interest alone, not in the total, in the total share of debt that we paid down. That's in 2018. By 2024, our debt servicing was 13 trillion naira, right? So there's a compounding interest to debt servicing and, making your interest rate payments, which, it's fine and good if we're borrowing $20+ trillion now, but how much are we going to be paying year on year? It is, how much of the share of the national budget will that be, right, in every financial year going forward, right? We, in effect, over the last 4 years, have been borrowing a bit more in order to make up some of our previous debt and commitments, right? And so all of those things come together in a way where we need to ask ourselves the question as to, if we are borrowing now, are we going to channel these resources to the right development priorities to increase the productive capacity of the average Nigerian, such that with tax receipts, with exports, or with other forms of productive activity, the economy is generating enough revenue that we are able to pay back into the federal coffers, and then we are able to meet our debt commitments. The final point I will add is the fact that we have infrastructural projects and we have other sorts of development priorities to take care of now does not mean that we will not need to keep investing in Nigeria, in the Nigerian economy, right, in the future. So we also need to have a parallel conversation around where we will find the resources for future investments, right? Because if we continue along this current debt servicing and debt, accumulation and debt acquisition path, there's a real question as to whether Nigeria may be seen by investors as the kind of country where it is worth advancing credits to, if they are not going, or if there is the perception that we are not going to make our debt commitments in the future. So it's not just about borrowing today, but it's about how you service that debt, how you're servicing already existing debt, how you service these new debts that the federal government wants to tack on the national accounts, and what is the potential for us to take on new debt, right, and generate enough revenue to be able to sustain that debt in the future. So it's a really compounding conversation, and hopefully that conversation is a public conversation. It happens at the National Assembly. The spotlight continues, to be shown on our policymakers as they make that happen. But my hopes are really not up, considering the body language of this current set of legislators and lawmakers that seem to okay almost everything without a very serious debate.
Okay, seem to have a bit of a network
as to where this lead Nigeria, from here on out.
All right. I mean, there are talks about, you've made mention of all of the key areas and key points why this borrowing could actually be impactful. And also, you mentioned we need to look inwards as well. We need to generate our own revenue as well to keep these taxes free and abated, in terms of not being hinged on every single Nigerian. I do recall that some months ago, especially during the Buhari administration, there were conversations regarding how much every single Nigerian is owing according to the debt ratio. But I wouldn't want to go into that. But my question is, we've looked at the aspect of the president borrowing. He's met with the assembly. What steps do you think the assembly should take, especially looking at experts who they may likely need to call in to look at the numbers, and then are able to debate, well, for the benefit of all Nigerians before approving this? Or do you think that it's not necessary? Because we've seen an assembly where people are afraid of that it could just be a rubber stamp assembly.
And where they're singing on your mandate, you should stand.
I mean, that's another one.
That's a great question, Joe. In terms of what they need to do, I think first and foremost, we need to receive testimony from the financial regulators who will actually be at the forefront of actually acquiring this debt on behalf of the Nigerian people. So the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Debt Management Office, some of the development finance institutions, because we not only need to, part of the reason why the conversation around the debt has been
I'm afraid it seems we lost connection with Kemisid there while he was trying to bring a clarity to that question. But let's see, hopefully, if we can reconnect and we can establish connection with him once more. Well, if we can't, I'm afraid it's a conversation that we might have to move further or forward and then take time
he's
to
answered
talk
the
about
critical questions.
Yeah, very good.
The only question that I believe is left is it a do or die? Are there alternative measures or options.
And also to look at, because part of why they're borrowing is also for pensions. So looking at the pension crisis and how we can navigate this crisis, is this some sort of a temporary fix when we talk about the current pension crisis that we're experiencing? Or is this a long-lasting solution? Are we expecting that after this borrowing happens, there'll be a reoccurrence of the current position now?
And this is also going to be all uhuru for the current administration, because remember that in the past few weeks, while we've spoken to members of the current ruling party, they've also said that 2 years, in the next 2 years, we're going to see what the president would do. And I'm thinking possibly this could be the way, the road to actually ensure that you start fixing things. But I'm told the Chemist is back. Chemist, if you're here, can you quickly touch on that question once again?
Yeah, okay, so I was saying that part of the issue that I personally have with the way the conversation around the national debt has historically been had is that it has been siloed from wider questions of national development and what national development priority should be, right? So oftentimes there are two parallel conversations that go on, right? CBN, the debt management office, would oftentimes be at the leading edge of saying, okay, we need to borrow X amount of money, or they would make announcements that we have in fact borrowed X amount of money at so and so interest rates, and it will be channeled to so and so priority. But there often isn't clear follow through, or if there is, it's not apparent to the general public. The National Assembly, for example, has committees that are saddled with oversight responsibilities for these agencies, but just generally for Nigeria's fiscal situation, as it were. I would like to see some of those committee hearings become more public. I would like to see the media, for example, be allowed to attend a lot more of those, hearings, so that the Nigerian people can have a general, continuously updated picture around, all these monies, right? Which in their name, Joe, the amount of money that the average Nigerian is on tap for, right, per person. And I think budget projects that number is going to rise up to 625,000 naira per person by the end of this year. And this is without this new borrowing request. So we need to have, a serious conversation around what exactly we're borrowing for. Can borrowing be tied to specific developmental priorities? So can we borrow specifically, or can bonds be raised specifically to invest in education? Like, in my opinion, primary and secondary education, like primarily, should we be looking at borrowing that is just ring-fenced to capital infrastructure provision? If you have a situation where you're borrowing because you're owning salaries, you need to pay salaries, then we are not going to get on a sustainable financial and fiscal path. This conversation also has to be tethered to wider conversations around fiscal sustainability. So we've been having, discussions, for example, around the size of governance and whether, the federal government needs to be this big. The federal government, after agriculture, is the single biggest employer of the most number of Nigerians. While that is often the case for many countries, does it need to be this big for a country, right, of our economic size? For example, there are folks who would argue, and I think I'll count myself in that camp, would say there are many people who appear to be loafing within the federal governance system, that we could do a lot better if we streamline agencies, if we rationalize agencies. We have a 2014 report, the Oronsoye report, which has not been faithfully executed on by, this is the third administration now since that report was published. That's probably a good place, a good starting point to go back and say, how many federal agencies do we need? How much are we spending on those agencies? We always get to a situation in December and January where reports come out about, some interesting budgeting item that a particular federal agency, maybe it's 1 or 2 billion for tissue paper, or 3 billion for transport, or stuff like that. That makes you really question whether we're spending the little resources we have in the most optimal way possible. So pairing the conversation around debt to wider conversations around the structure of our economy, what sort of economy we want to have, what sort of values, what sort of projections, what sort of priorities we want to fund over a 5 to 10 year horizon, and then channeling those resources and prosecuting those who participate in resource leakage or corruption, as it were. All of this is a holistic conversation that needs to happen. A lot of our policymakers like to separate and pass out those priorities. But in the end, what are we borrowing for? Where do these borrowings go to? And why have we put ourselves in a situation where we need to borrow as much? This is the second full year of this administration. And now we've come to a situation where for the second year running, we need supplementary borrowing, right? In order to make the national accounts work. That should indicate to us that we can't keep going on like this, and we need to chart a better path forward.
Thank you for joining us this morning to dissect exactly what the concerns of Nigerians are and the expectations regarding this intended borrowing. We'll keep up with the latest updates as we proceed on that story. Thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. And now let's move on to other story. But before we get to this other story, we'll just go on a very quick break and share with you what's coming up next. Coming up next on Breakfast Central, President Tinubu orders review of Child Rights Act in celebration of Children's Day, and 6 abducted students regain freedom in Port Harcourt. That's some good news. Sad still. Tinubu seeks approval for loans and pension bond. We have just finished that conversation. But now let's bring you what's coming up next.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. The House of Representatives has held a special valedictory session in honor of 5 members of the 10th Assembly who died while in active service. Speaker of the House, Abbas Tajuddin, led lawmakers in paying glowing tributes to the departed, describing them as patriots who served their nation with commitment and honor. News Central's Idong Joseph has more in this report.
My condolences to the family members. This is a very sad day for us.
It was a solemn day in the Green Chamber as lawmakers gathered to honor 5 of their own. The late lawmakers, all elected and inaugurated into the 10th House on June 13, 2023, passed away in the course of duty between October 2023 and January 2025.
The person of Right Honorable Adewumi Oriyomi Onanuga, affectionately called Ijaya, Honorable Abdulkadir Jelani Dambuga, Honorable Isa Dogonyaru, Honorable Olaide Adewale Akiremi, lovingly referred to as Jagaban, and Honorable Ikeme Abubakar Adams, fondly dubbed the youngest, left a pain in our hearts and a void in our deliberations.
In tribute lensed with emotion, their colleagues recalled personal moments, shared legislative battles, and the commitment each of them showed to their constituencies and national developments.
Her cries still rings in my ears from that noble table where she sat. I remember her favorite slang when she ordered members to sit. Order, order, order.
To my notice, Isa was aware of his days before he died. Isa is my neighbor. We are all from Ringim, Emirates, 4 local governments. Isa is representing 2, Gerkibabra. I'm representing Tauraringim.
For the families seated in chamber, the occasion was bittersweet. Children of the deceased lawmakers also rose to speak in memory of their parents, remembering not just the public figures, but the loved ones they lost.
Our father believed deeply in the value of service that puts people above politics, and legacy above personal gain. He approached his responsibilities not with entitlement, but with humility.
To me, he was a loving father who inspired me to become a man I am today. He loved this country, and he gave out his work, his voice, and his strength to make our state and local government a better place for people to live in.
Beyond honoring the deceased, the public farewell reinforces the weight of public office and the fleeting nature of life. In Abuja for News Central, Idong Joseph.
Very interesting coverage there by Idong Joseph, our man who was on ground. But away from that story, let's take you straight to Port Harcourt, you could say, to a place where, you know, there's somewhat celebration that's touched the hearts and lives of parents. Well, the recent surge in kidnappings in Port Harcourt, the River State capital, has cost many families their loved ones, with families of victims accusing the government and security agencies of negligence and complicity. The Oluwaseyi family, whose daughter Favour was kidnapped on August 17, 2024, has joined the growing list of households demanding justice and swift actions from authorities. News Central's Bola Festus has been following this story and now brings us more on the missing 12-year-old girl.
She's supposed to write GST this year. When I'm washing others' clothes, I'm not washing my daughter's clothes. Oluwato for me. No love in marriage again, no peace, no happiness. Because our children is our happiness.
Leave them back to this side. Let us have joy.
These heart-wrenching statements from a grieving family whose 12-year-old daughter has been missing for 9 months is another sad reminder of the security challenges facing the average Nigerian.
He even threatened that my daughter's private part will be cut. My daughter will be pieces, and all our private parts will be sold to Alaji.
Yes.
Of which we have all this conversation on record.
It's not now, personal. You please. Government should please. My fellow women should please. I'm passing through pains that I can't explain to anybody. Sometimes I just be inside my room crying. Because I'm missing her. Sometimes I will carry her clothes. That a lot of me come back. Because of this, my father-in-law is in stroke.
where is my sister? Is she sleeping on the bed or she's sleeping on the floor? Where is my sister? My bedmate, someone that we gist. Both of us we gist. Sometimes we stay late at night, we talk to each other. My sister made this cap for me. She made it. And our plan was that when school closed, we would tell our father what to enter a business making cap because people say they love the cap.
CCTV footage around the neighborhood captured Favour being led to a tricycle by a stranger accompanied by our teenage friend. Days after, the friend's family reportedly moved out of the neighborhood, raising suspicions.
Very sad situation. You could watch that entire report on our social media page. But let's bring on Bola Festus, who joins us this morning. Bola, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And can you give us a quick update on what the situation really is like?
Thank you, Johansen. So this story has been a very touching one. For me, as a reporter reporting this story, it's really got to me because if you could see a man weeping the way Favour's father was weeping, then you know that something strong had befallen him. So yesterday, the family protested to the state police command, demanding a thorough investigation into the case of a missing. Earlier before now, they told me that the police have really not done anything tangible with this, especially as they have been able to investigate and trace the suspects to a correctional center in Enugu. So this family here is so pained because you would imagine that the security architecture would be there to protect you. But right in their den or right in their nets, they are suspecting that somebody is coordinating a crime that has now affected their family and thrown them into this sorrow they are in right now. So their pain is beyond losing a child. Their pain is now even about the security, the Nigerian society failing them in terms of security.
All right. I mean, just before I allow Olive and Benga come in, we also just put up a clip that showed the other story in which you covered students who were on their way to write WAEC from the Bile community, and they were equally kidnapped as well. We did hear yesterday that there was good news. They were released from their captors. Can you also shed more light on that as well? Because we also saw the footage of that one.
Yeah, they regained freedom 2 days ago. That's on Monday, after being in captivity for 21 days. Now, these people that regained their freedom, it's not just one passenger boat hijacked. They were up to 3 passenger boats hijacked at different occasions. So this has been going on in this community called Bile. Now, Bile is a community in Degima local government area of Rivers State, where you have just the sea route as the only way in and out of that community. So these pirates have taken advantage of that to venture, if you would call it, into the business of kidnapping. When they hijack a boat, they call the families and ask for ransom. The last I covered, that was a month ago, the people, the victims, their family paid the whooping sum of 28 million naira to these kidnappers before they regained freedom. So it's becoming an enterprise for them, and a thriving one at that. But the annoying part, according to locals of that community, is that the government seem to be silent about it, and they've said it's time without number that they are ready to assist the security in securing their waterways. Now, these people, they have lots of creeks and creeklets that the security operatives might not be able to identify or locate, but with their help, they can comb all those hidden areas. So this has been their cry and their call that they want to join hands with the Nigerian military to secure their waterways because they know their terrain and they can better do it. Johansson.
This again, brings back the conversation about state policing, community policing, and the role that these quote-unquote vigilantes have to play in ensuring that they secure their states, their villages, their communities. How it makes sense from what you're saying if the locals are saying that they want to volunteer to work with law enforcement agents because they understand their terrain better than anyone. But I'll leave that for the security experts to analyze. It just feels, Biola, like we're having the same story, two different outcomes. On the one hand, some families are rejoicing because they've been reunited with their family members, while Tofumi family members, they're breaking down because they don't know where Tofumi is and they don't know anything about her whereabouts. You said that these 6 abducted, freed individuals paid 28 million. Has Tofumi's family paid any money?
Let me make a correction there. The 6 abducted YX students alongside other passengers did not pay ransom. The people I said paid a ransom were the previous story I worked on where you had some persons paid the ransom, not the recent one, not the one that involved 6 YX candidates.
Thank you for that correction.
But other people have been kidnapped. Thank you, Olive. Other people have been kidnapped on same waterway and they have been paying ransom. But this time around, their release came as a result of the intervention of King Asari Dokubo. He's a very prominent person in this region, in the Niger Delta region. So he has a private security outfit that facilitated their release. So their release came as a result of the security outfits raiding their hideouts. And this was after one of the abductees was released, but he had paid a ransom. So he was the one that actually led the security operatives, the local security operatives, to their hideouts.
All right, and now back to Tofumi's family. Did they make any payments for her? Have there been any strong demands, and have there been any financial commitments?
Yes, the Oluwatofumi Favour Oluwaseyi's family, they told me that they had paid a ransom to someone who called them, a strange number that called them after their daughter was abducted, claiming he or they were the ones responsible for her abduction. So they made a ransom, they paid the first ransom, and then they told me that another person called them again saying, oh, the ransom you paid for your daughter was my boy that collected it. That was a very small amount. Now I am the Oga, I'm the ringleader, and now I'm asking you for some millions. I can't actually remember the actual figures right now. Some millions. This family now told them that we are poor, we can't afford that. So with the calls and all of that, they took this phone number to the security operatives, to the anti-kidnapping units. That's where they also paid some money, and the number was traced to a bank, and then they had to seek to know the BVN, which of course a BVN is your BVN number is your identification. So they traced that BVN to somebody who is in the Enugu Correctional Center. And then they went there, according to Oluwaseyi's father, they went there with some personnel of the Nigeria police from Port Harcourt to Enugu. They told me that they met the prisoner, I beg your pardon, and then they brought a book for him to make some statements. He wrote statements agreeing to the fact that he is involved in kidnapping and all of this. And then after writing his statement, this is what they told me. It was now time for him to sign before a prison warder came and called him to the side, talked to him, and then he came back and refused to sign. I didn't go with them, but this is the story that the father of the missing girl told me. So this is what is prompting them to accuse the entire security architecture in Nigeria of complicity and attempts to shield an alleged criminal.
Now, We understand that other civil society groups involved in this case. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, where do we stand? Because the last information we got was that the Oluwaseyi family is accusing the Nigerian police of cover-up and the Enugu Correctional Facility. Where are we with that case right now?
That's where this the case stops. They told me that after discovering that the suspect is at the Enugu State Correctional Center, there have been no further investigations. They've not been able to provide this person for questioning and investigations. So as at yesterday, when they marched to the police headquarters, that was where they were happy. No, we need this person at the Enugu State Correctional Center released for questioning, because we believe the Oluwaseyi's family believe that he's got a hand in all of this.
No, I really don't know how to feel about the story. It's so sad hearing all these revelations that you're making, the claims that the family is making. And by virtue of us having this conversation on television, we're hoping that we're shining the spotlight on Oluwatofunmi Favour's case, and that the government takes a deeper look into this. We have seen a number of cases in Port Harcourt. What is the sense? How safe do the people in Port Harcourt feel? How important are these waterways? Are there alternative modes of transportation, or are these very, very important ones that they can't do without, such that we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder?
River State is a highly coastal state. There are several communities here that you cannot access except through water, except by boats. So communities like Degema, communities like Kula, several others I can't begin mentioning, are only accessible by boats. Now, the government have on several occasions claimed that they provided gunboats or security on the waterways. But the people are saying we are not seeing it. Other communities are claiming that that instead of these security operatives or gunboats escorting passengers, escorting the common man while traveling, they are escorting multinationals operating in those communities. This has been their claims over time. So I have also traveled on these waterways severally, and I have never had a security escort if I am traveling on the passenger boat. I've never had a security escort. So I am not only speaking from their point of view. I have been there to these communities to tell their stories, and I have never been escorted by security operatives. So that is the situation. And you can imagine the people of Bili during this their times of having their people kidnapped. Severally, I asked them, can we go to Bili today? Let's see what is happening. And they tell me, we cannot guarantee you security. I will advise you not to come to Bili. I mean, somebody telling me you can't come to my place because I can't guarantee you security. That is how bad this is. And their pain is also that the government is not doing something tangible on this. There has been no strong stance from the government on this. And these are communities that contribute not just to the River State economy, to the Nigerian economy through their oil wells and all.
Okay, let's get to hear from former youth leader in Bile community. Let's bring in Oswald Dukoibiri. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning on the show, sir. Let's hear from you directly. You're a former youth leader in Bile community. What is the security situation? Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. I was asking, as a former youth leader in Bile community, what is the current security situation?
Well, I think we've not been able to establish the audio connection with Mr. Hosford. Hopefully, we can do that soon. But just to wrap things up from your end, Biola Festus, covering these events back to back. Yesterday, let me go back to the 6 students who regained freedom while going to sit for the WAEC examination. They met with their parents. We could see jubilation in the air. I do remember one of the parents whom you also had in one of the report package. She was crying, she was weeping and all of that. But can you share with us what the parents are saying regards the children coming back home, and what are their plans, especially for having their children go back to that same school or schools, or rewriting the examinations as well?
I think I asked them this very question, and their straight answer was, I'm not sure. Out of those 6 WAEC students, 2 of them were their parents' only child. Those 2 boys there were their parents' only child or children. So when I asked the woman right on the screen, our child, the boy with her, is the only child she has. And when I asked her, is it going back to school? She said she's not sure. Let us have him back first, and then we'll think of what comes on or what we do next. This woman also, right there on your screen, our only child was also involved, and they are not sure. I mean, why will education, the cost of education, be your life or your child's life or your child's safety? She said she's not sure anymore. Going to school to sit for exams, look at what has happened to her. She was thrown into turmoil for 21 days. She told me that she didn't cook in her house for a day since her child went missing. So, I mean, if education is going to be like this, she doesn't know what to do next.
Biola Festus, thank you for bringing us these updates regarding the safety and security situation in Rivers State. It's really sad that for a country that has really high levels or high scores when it comes to the number of out-of-school children, insecurity again is fueling those numbers. But we hope that you can help us to get more updates, and would love to speak with the families that have been affected, with the parents and the students as well, if their parents do give them the permission. But thank you for joining us this morning, and do stay safe. All right, we'll now go on a break. Very sad story there, but we'll go on a break, and when we come back, we'll look at more stories this morning.
Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu, in a major policy shift on this year's Children's Day, announced there would be a comprehensive review of the Child Rights Act 2023 and the Violence Against Persons Act Prohibition Act 2015. The president says this review aims to expand protections, close implementation gaps, and ensure nationwide enforcement.
In his Children's Day speech yesterday, the president appealed for a nationwide community involvement in child protection, just as he launched a new public awareness initiative titled See Something, Say Something, Do Something. He campaigned for a bullying-free environment, amongst other things. Joining us to discuss this and critical matters about children's welfare, policy enforcement, and its broader impact on the Nigerian society is the team lead at EduPlan, Oriyomi Ogunwale. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, how do you receive this update? Is this an exciting update? Do you think that it's long overdue, and how timely would you say it is?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but this is an update from the 2003 Child Rights Act. And one of those things you look at or you begin to ask yourself is, it took Nigeria 20 years for the 36 states to adopt the CRA, the Child Rights Act. And what that means on the long run is, are we going to spend another 20 years? Because what this is about to do is to update the 2003 Act. So if we spend 20 years in adopting that across the 36 states and FCT. Are we going to spend the next 20 years doing that? And when you look at this CRA that the president has actually pushed forward, is to, just like you said, to close the implementation gap and to see how they can make budgetary allocations to the CRA. So this is something that, personally, looking at it, I feel it's not something to be too excited about. It's just something that should have been done at the first instance. If it took 20 years for 36 states, 26 states just make sure that it is passed into law, just 26 states, and only 3 states, Lagos, Kebbi, and Nasarawa, has actually made that effort to begin implementation. So if that has happened in the span of 20 years, I think we celebrated children's education yesterday.
States that you mentioned that implementation is still lax. You still see children on construction sites playing on the roads and things like that. But let's look at like they say, devil is in the detail, the upgrade or the updating of this Child Rights Act. What are some of the key elements that you can point to that was missing in the 2003 version?
I think one key issue that I saw going through the speech yesterday was that part of the budgetary allocation, and that is something that has not been there before. I know no matter how beautiful the paper is, for implementation to happen, there needs to be some bit of funding. There needs to be some budgetary allocation towards this thing. However, the other parts you will then look at is, will the funding or will the allocation complete the implementation of that particular act? And that is the bigger issue, the devil in the detail, because there is one thing about to make allocation, there is one thing about releasing the funds for this project, and there's another part of it, the fund being used to implement. So there's a lot of details for us to get results, even as a nation, on the long run. And then you go to some states, just like you rightly mentioned, and you see that not much is being done at all. Not much is being done. And you look at, maybe before now, you say Lagos State. When you look at the Child Rights Act, you talk about juvenile homes, you talk about correctional centers, you talk about having safe spaces for kids who maybe they are hawking. You can actually have a policy where you take them to be properly attended to while their parents come around, and you ask questions about why is this child on the street. But just like I said, just 3 states out of 36 and the FCT so far have started a process of making sure that these children have attention. And we now have an update. Let's see, is there a policy backing from the federal government, from the president, to say, now this time around, we want states to take the next step? Maybe as advocates to now say, okay, the president has said we want to do this. What is your state allocating towards child protection in your state? So that when we have that then helps us to say this is the progress we have made so far, and we don't spend another 20 years dancing around this again.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I like how you broke that down. And I also like the fact that you've mentioned implementation. Also under the Child Act, there's also an elephant in the room that is often disguised or often, shoved aside, and that's got to do with the prohibition of child marriage. We've seen this not being often discussed, and when it shows it rears its ugly head, there's a segment of individuals or Nigerians who would always push it to a certain class of persons or states, but we forget that it is a country as a whole. How do you think this part of the Child's Act can be further, enhanced, talked about, and do you think it should also be highlighted and looked into, especially with a review from the president?
And in order to address that, I think looking at the update yesterday from the president, one of those key that is very, very important. You cannot build a nation without involving citizens, without involving communities. without involving the leaders. And the president can stay in Aso Rock in Abuja and give his own policy, to make his own speech, to make his own statement. You still need to go back to the communities and say to them, this is what we want to do. You can get their feedback. And I think for me, like the Child Rights Act being for a review, now that a review is about to start, they need to go back to the communities. This is what we want to achieve. How do we achieve this? And because if the community leaders, if the traditional leaders don't adopt this, it's not going to pass any reading. And case in point is Kano State, where it was passed at the House and it was taken to the governor's office for action. And then there was a protest. In some parts of the state, there was a protest.
People protested against something to protect children.
Exactly. So the Child Rights Act was passed by the House. So it's sent to the governor for action. And after that, people protested.
I mean, what's the rationale behind the protest?
So I want to imagine that it's because there's the element of the intersection between culture and religion.
Tradition, culture. And that's the big elephant in the room, actually. And one of those things I just can point out there is the role that the community leaders, the traditional leaders play. So if they can, and it's also about everyone trying to protect their interest, if they can go a long way to say, this is what we want to do and this is what we want to achieve, then it's going to go a long way. Just like we're talking about early marriage, which is still something that affects children today. You see age 10, 12, 14 getting married. And this is what the Child Rights Act aims to achieve. However, if there cannot be that sensitization, that community engagement, that community advocacy, getting the leaders on board to say, what can we do to make sure that our girl child are not forced into early marriage? And they can propose solutions, and those solutions can have action-based activities that are implemented in the communities so that they can begin to tell the young men, or maybe the allergies, or maybe the parents also who give their daughters out to say, this is what we want to do. And it also comes back to the economic factor, poverty. You say, oh, parents are looking at their girl child and like, if somebody comes around to say, I will take your child away from you, not necessarily to say, I will even give you money. Just the upbringing of that your child. You don't need to bear it anymore.
The financial
I will take her, I will marry her. Then parents need a lot of sensitization to say, let your child go to school. We will support you as a community to ensure that you are not forced into early marriage. So these are the steps that needs to be taken. However, if these steps are not taken, then we are still going to come back to the Child Rights Act. Just like I was sharing earlier, just to accent it, to pass it into law, not to say you are even going to start implementation, just pass into law first. And that is where they had issues. So there are a lot of details that seem to be fleshed out. And I believe that over time, with advocacy, with orientation, we can change these things gradually.
Where's the distance between where we are as regards what the law provides for and the implementation of these laws? And how do we ensure that when this update has happened, that we're not seeing a huge gap between the law as is, or the provisions of the law, and then the act and the implementation of this?
I also think that for policymakers who would have shared with the president that this needs a review, they would have actually looked at some of these factors that we mentioned about and probably come up with solutions to say, this is the next step that we need to take. And that's why you could see that there are 3 pointers: closing the implementation gaps, ensuring that there is budgeting for it. And that's the difference between policy and implementation. And it's like I was looking at yesterday, it's about, let us see, this is a review. Afterwards, they come up with a white paper. Now, it is that white paper that would actually then show what is this government serious about. Because you can put anything on paper. You can say, we will do this, we will do that. But if the steps, the activities that are going to be implemented are not realistic in the host communities that want that these changes will be implemented in, then it's just going to be another back and forth. One thing I'll just also say is the Child Rights Act is still the Child Rights Act. I don't, looking at a review is just to say, let us have a statement for this Children's Day. However, if this review is going to happen this time around, it's an update that this government must take very, very seriously.
Now, beyond the Children's Day sound bites and the colorful speeches and the lip service, which a lot of government agencies have been paying to this issue, we have low-hanging fruit. We have commonsensical things we can deal with. In our society, I'm talking of, we reside in Lagos. Our HQ is in Lagos, and that's where we're speaking from. And you drive around town, school time, you see kids begging on the streets in different parts of the metropolis. You see government officials pass this road, ordinary citizens see them, they become a daily fixture. And we're not bothered, you know, nobody flinches. Accidents could happen there. Whose responsibility is it? There's a social welfare department, I believe, in Lagos State. And why have we normalized these things? You can't go to Europe and see kids hawking or begging on the streets or major roads. These are things that we can deal with commonsensically. You don't need a white paper or accent from a governor to sign it. These are little issues. Or you go around construction sites, you see children carrying pans on their head.
I think I beg to differ that.
Is it that some people are not doing their jobs, or the problem is overwhelming?
First thing first, if we want to take it from the root, this is poverty first. It's poverty first.
I mean, so people are using those kids as a cartel for begging. They have parents behind them who send them on missions. I understand the poverty factor for the maybe construction workers and sites and all of that, but yeah.
I think getting your point very well. One of those things I would just say about that is it's a failure on the part of government, and for me, I look at it from the political angle.
Okay.
Yeah, and when you look at begging, for example, it should not be happening on our streets, especially just like you mentioned in Lagos, because practically we just have people who coming into the state and believe that begging can be a business that they can do. And it's a failure on the part of the government if you are not able to mop them up and have a way to address it, because it's become I don't want to use the word pandemic now, but you go to different parts of Lagos and you see people just trooping every day. I'm going to look for my own daily bread in Lagos, and then they get there and the only occupation they have is to beg. So the state government, for example, would have gone a long way to actually check border crossing, to actually say we don't want people in this community. And I think it has been done before, but probably...
I mean, every citizen of Nigeria has a right to live in any part
of course. But it has been done before in order to checkmate this thing, but maybe the system is overwhelmed. But one of those things you can also say is their enforcement approach to this thing is still very, very poor at this moment, and that is what it speaks to. And it's just a call to the government to actually make sure that we should not be having children who are on the streets during school hours. So we must ensure, and you also look at the government looking at it, that where are they from? Do you understand now? Where are they from? Who did they represent? So there's also...
Because if we decide now, which I think is very important, to clear these children off the streets, where are we taking them to? do we have facilities that take care of children?
Like
who
shelters and all that?
Shelters. Do we have shelters where they'll be taken care of, given proper food, access to education? Do we have that?
And sadly, that is what the Child Rights Act is meant to address. However, not much is still being done at this point to say we want to address that. And that because in order to implement a policy, for example, you're supposed to do what we call a needs assessment to say this is the number of children that we have on our streets. This is the number of facilities that can address, that can house them. And then you go ahead to make these things, make them available. After making them available, you then mop them up and say, if you don't want to go into our correctional centers, then you don't have to be on our streets. And I think that is when enforcement can be effective. So that when they know that when I'm on the street, I'm going to be put in a correctional center or a juvenile center, then there is a
shelter.
A shelter, then there is a way they can address these things. You look at the FCT, for example, or even in some northern states where they have the IDP settlement areas. We can have settlement areas where you bring these people in and then put them there, pending the time that they can then find a way to get back to wherever they come from.
Oh, well. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and government agencies do have their work cut off for them. It's not, every time it's not handing conditional cash transfers or sharing rice. There are some problems that rice cannot solve.
I agree with you. I agree. Anyway, it's been a wonderful conversation. I want to say thank you so much for spending time to dissect this. And like you said, move to white paper, let's see what the review and so on, then it passes reading. And we hope what happened in the north will not take place in major states in Nigeria, so that every single child deserves the right to be protected.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's it. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here as well.
Thank you.
Breakfast Central continues. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, we do have the breakfast headlines to bring to you. But let's also let you know that there's more still to come.
Breakfast Headlines begins in West Africa, where Nigeria's Senate on Tuesday received a formal request from President Tinubu seeking approval for a $21.5 billion external loan along with a 758 billion naira domestic bond issuance. The funds, according to the president, are intended to finance critical infrastructure, health, education and water supply, as well as different projects across the country. The request was read during plenary and has been referred to the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debts. Lawmakers expect a report on the proposal within 2 weeks. In a separate letter, the president also asked for Senate authorization to issue federal government bonds worth 757.9 billion naira in the domestic debt market. The funding is earmarked specifically to settle outstanding pension liabilities under the contributory pension scheme.
The House of Representatives is invited to note that the 2025-2026 borrowing plan cut across all sectors with specific emphasis on infrastructure, agriculture, health, education, water supply, growth, security and employment generation, as well as financial management reforms, among others. Total facility of the project and programs under the borrowing rolling plan is United States dollars 21,543,647,912, and also 2,193,856,324.54 euro, and in Japanese yen, 15 billion yen, and grant of 65 million respectively, and the summary of the breakdown is attached.
And now let's go to political matters. The controversy over the position of National Secretary in the People's Democratic Party, PDP, remains unresolved as the party's National Executive Committee says a final decision will be taken at its next meeting slated for the 30th of June. Addressing journalists at the conclusion of the 99th NEC meeting held in Abuja, the acting national chairman of the party, Umar Ilia Damagom, said the NEC received and adopted the resolution from the Southeast Zonal Executive Committee on the disputed office, but deferred final action. Meanwhile, the NEC ratified the composition of key committees ahead of the party's national convention. Nicholas Ukachukwu of the All Progressives Congress has received the party's flag to contest the upcoming Anambra State governorship election on the platform of the APC. Ukachukwu, a former member of the House of Representatives and a prominent businessman, clinched the APC ticket for the off-cycle governorship election coming up on the 8th of November this year, scoring 1,455 votes and defeating his closest rival, Valentine Ozigbo, who scored just 67 votes. President Bola Tinubu presented the APC flag to Ukachukwu and his deputy, Uche Ekunife, during their meeting at the presidential villa in Abuja. The Lagos State government has announced traffic diversion on major roads ahead of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Golden Jubilee. The event is scheduled for May 27th to 29th. Deputy Director of Public Affairs at the Lagos State Ministry of Transportation, Bolanle Ogunlola, issued the advisory in a statement on Monday. President Bola Tinubu is expected to deliver a speech on the economic achievements of the regional bloc during the event. Ogunlola said the advisory is aimed at ensuring smooth flow of traffic and enhancing security around NIIA House and Eco Hotels during the event. Away from Nigeria, the families of two Nigerians who were gunned down in South Africa are seeking justice following their death. Adeyemi Ismaila and Taiwo Raja were killed allegedly over a phone in Arcadia in Pretoria while they were doing their business. The wives of the two Nigerians say they need the Nigerian government to intervene in the continued killings of Nigerians in South Africa. And that's all that we have this morning. Remember that you may send your eyewitness reports to the numbers on your TV screen. And you can, of course, contact and communicate with us via our social media handles at News Central TV. That's all on Breakfast Headlines. Breakfast Central continues.
Welcome back. It's Breakfast Central and we're going straight to the front pages of the newspapers. You can be part of the papers. By the way, just call the number you find on the screen and share your thoughts on some of the very interesting stories we would be looking at on the front pages of the Punch, Daily Times, and of course any other paper that we would be taking.
The Nation newspaper.
Yes, of course, in the course of the conversation. We do have public affairs analyst who's here with us. We do have Mr. Semyon. Professor, I beg your pardon.
Don't ever make that kind of costly mistake again.
I'm so sorry, Professor. Please,
thank you very much.
Accept my
I do have a lovely day. Welcome, viewers.
Great to have you here.
Yeah.
Oliver's around the corner, so she would be also joining us in the course of this conversation. Well, let's start off with the very first paper. Let's see if we can put that up on the screen, and it's the Punch. Yes, there you have it, the Punch newspaper. And on the front page of the Punch, we have that headline there, which says, first $24 billion borrowing may balloon Nigeria's debt to 183 trillion naira. That's what it could do. Now set to, appear, I beg your pardon, didn't see
National Assembly to approve Tinubu's loan request. Foreign debt near $70 billion. Economists worry over high debt servicing.
That's one of the biggest stories right from yesterday, and it's still a big one even in conversation. But that's just one story. The other part of the Punch newspaper is basically just celebrating the president's 2 years of Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
and at the top right corner, there's PDP neck under pressure as INEC validates Wike-backed secretary. And also NFIU probes 48 billion naira suspicious transfers to Dubai and Hong Kong.
Anyway, we're not just going to take that paper alone. Let's take another one so we can make it...
okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the Daily Times. The headline says 15-year, $500 million Nigeria Trust Fund, additional grateful to federal government, gives account of 10-year stewardship at the African Development Bank. That's the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. We also have troops foil attack on New Marte Kumshe, neutralized schools of insurgents in Borno State. So some positive news there. Tinubu asked National Assembly to approve $21.5 billion foreign loan and 758 billion pensions loan. That's domestic. And we also have EBAS to defend Rivers budget before Joint National Assembly Committee. 80% of workers lack social protection, says NECA, and reps move to restructure Nigeria's finance sector. NAFDAC uncovers fake drug factory in Delta State. I believe that's all on the Daily Times.
All right, let's start off with the very first one. Let's go straight to the first paper, The Punch. I would like to get your input on the latest borrowing. Nigerians, a cross-section of Nigerians have said that there wouldn't be any scrutiny. They're certain that there wouldn't be any scrutiny from the National Assembly.
It's as good as approved.
It's as good as it gets. Good as
no,
as
the
approved.
day it got to the National Assembly, it got approved. Because from day one, they told us, so you are not going to blame them, they told us that whatever the president brings, they will approve. And that was why they sang, on your mandate,
we shall stand.
We shall stand. From day one, they told you that. Now, you see, my worry is when I was on this studio, when it was reported that we have cleared our debts from IMF and what have you. And I said, I smell a rat. The push has come to shove. The essence of doing that is what is happening now. Now, look at the details of the amount we are borrowing. We are not just borrowing in dollars, we are borrowing in euros, we are borrowing in yen. You have 21 billion, 543 million, 647,912 dollars. Then you have 2 billion, 193 million, 856,324.54 euros. Then you have 15 billion Japanese yen and a grant of 65 million euros. Not forgetting the domestic debt, the domestic borrowing of 757 billion 9 million, okay, 0.9 billion, that's 900 million, to settle outstanding pension liabilities.
Yeah.
And my question is, what have we been doing all these years? I recall that this contributory pension started in 2004. Now, what have we been doing from there till now that we have this colossal amount that government have not settled? And our pensioners are struggling. Most of them are not getting their pension. You see, it was Obasanjo that brought this contributory thing. Now, the workers will contribute their own, and federal government will not bring the counterpart funding to do this. So why are we like this? Why are we suffering our senior citizens? It's only in Nigeria that senior citizens are suffered. Over there, once you're a senior citizen, the government takes care of everything, including your medical bills. But here, to give them the little stipend that they're entitled to, nobody does that.
But the government is also borrowing this for capital projects to spur development, infrastructure projects, things that will stimulate commerce and the economy.
Sorry,
is that not a possibility?
let me read part of why they are borrowing. He said they're borrowing according to him. was necessary due to the impact of fuel subsidy removal and its broader economic consequences. That's blueprint reporting. That is as a result of the shocks that we got from fuel subsidy removal. And some of us said it from day one, that the way this fuel subsidy was removed was very wrong. The very first day, you just say, subsidy gone, without any proper arrangement to cushion the effects of this subsidy. That's what we're having today. Now, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. If there's any election in any country, what investors do is that they wait for the president's first speech everywhere in the world. That's what happens. So once you deliver your first speech, it gives them a signal of where you're going. Now, the day he said that offhandedly, because thank God he came back to say that the writers of his speech did not include that in the speech. So it was something that just came from the blues, and they went ahead to say that. I mean, look at the consequence now. You are talking of infrastructure. We know that at the end of the day, they tell us it's for infrastructure. But we're going to find out what infrastructure. You see, my problem with even the National Assembly is that the National Assembly should have asked the president to mention the infrastructure.
You expect more scrutiny.
Exactly.
Yes, so that we know the infrastructure that these monies are going to. Because when you borrow money for consumption, you destroy the economy. So if they are borrowing for infrastructure,
because if you look at the budgets in the past, the debt servicing part is more than the budget for education, more than the budget for health. So how do you grow as a country?
That tells you that they are borrowing not for investment, they are borrowing for consumption. That's why it's that way. That's why we have huge amounts of repayment of the loans, because if it is for infrastructure, the infrastructure, some of them will be generating funds for you to pay back this loan. So you won't have a situation where the interest you are paying on loan will be so much that it will swallow every other thing. Because those things are supposed to be producing. Even when you do roads and toll roads, the roads will produce at the end of the day.
Well, are there any alternative? Must we borrow in the first place?
Well, what is alternative? When you don't have, you see, naturally we expected by now, the way they were going, we will not only depend on crude oil again.
Oil imports, yeah.
The agricultural sector would have been producing. The solid mineral should have been producing. We have a lot of solid mineral in this country that's not being tapped. And when they are being tapped, they go to private pockets. That's the problem we have. So if we had other avenues of generating money, we won't be where we are today. I said it from day one that those loans they repaid back from IMF and World Bank, that devil was in the details. You can see it now.
All right, I think
you can see it playing out.
Let's get to hear what one of our callers had to say. Hello?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. All right, Uche, go ahead.
At the issue of this borrowing, at this point, governments have told us that they are making much money this time around because of what? The movement of the credit office. The states are getting careful of what they are getting. What instead of borrowing money, you're making much money. I'm still confused. People should tell us, or let government explain to Nigerians the issue of this borrowing. And they're borrowing in different places, not only one source. We have heard that they are going to borrow in different denomination of currencies. And they have told us they have paid some. I think Nigeria should canvass all the agencies that are responsible of, lending money. Should stop giving Nigeria money until we do the needful. Let us do the needful. Let us look inward. There is money in this country. It's because of our leaders, they are not putting on their thinking cap. They are borrowing money. Borrowing money for what? Putting us in slavery. See who goes on borrowing. Goes on borrowing. That's the other. Until they do the right thing. They are talking about restructuring of financial sector. Let them also talk about restructuring the country so that we stop borrowing this, flimsy things. God bless you people.
Thank you for that angle you brought. Let me play the devil's advocate here. I just pray that they are not borrowing this money for 2027 elections. I just pray. Because, like he said, I even forgot that the monies they are sharing now, they say, is about triple what they were getting before. So why are you sharing so much money to make governors happy?
No, because the savings we've made from the removal of subsidy. Yes.
But the problem now is, I read it from, not from social media, it's blueprints, that said, he said that the borrowing is to cushion the effects of the fuel subsidy. So if you're making so much money from fuel subsidy, why are we...
The oil, the shock, because we budgeted oil,
are we not speaking grammar here?
At $70 per barrel.
Yes, and it's going down.
Already. Yeah, it's dropped.
It's dropped already.
The difference.
Okay. Now, the difference. You see, the time the budget was read, I told you people, it was, I think, this very place, that I said that budget is a wish list. It is not a budget. It was a wish list.
You said it wasn't realistic.
Yes, I said it was not realistic. It was a wish list. Is it not coming to play now? That's a wish list. It was not a budget. It was a wish list. Because how can you be budgeting 2.6 million barrels of oil per day when you are not making 1.6? And you are budgeting 2.6. You can see it's a wish list.
Maybe. And it was tagged at $70.
And look at it. Today, we have not even gotten up to 1.8. Have we gotten up to 1.8? We have not. So what are we saying? It was just a wish. And they just wrote their wish on a list and said it is a budget.
They have to cover for the shortfalls. Especially they have to cover for the shortfalls. And the conversations of not having to go back to the ways and means, the CBN ways and means, and so on. It's a lot.
They are going to go back to that.
Yeah.
They are going to go back to that. Recall during the Buhari regime, they were denying that they were not going back to ways and means.
Yes.
But later on, it was discovered that they even went way more than what anybody can think of. At the end of the day, because these people, you can't trust them. They will go back to ways and when they try the domestic loans now is not coming up, what will they do? Ways and means to make it up, to beef it up. That's what they do. We know that, except anybody who does not know that wants to fool himself. Because at the end of the day, when it happens, I'll still come back here and tell you, I told you so.
All right. Let's see if we can get our final paper. But let's go back to Benga.
We haven't touched on
the Daily Times.
Let's look at The Nation. And then pick one story.
I also wanted
The Nation newspaper, the headline says, PDP APC clash over one-party claim. Opposition attacks ruling party over economy and insecurity. There's also rumpus over third-term bid by Lagos Council Chair. Democracy at 26, too much to do. Tinubu 6 lawmakers nod, we just touched on that. And JAMB WAG go tough on exam malpractices. You wanted to check something on?
Yeah, I also wanted us to, I think you have the story here. The one at the top there, troops foil attack on New Mate Kumshe, neutralize scores of insurgents in Borno. You did hear what the Borno State Governor said just a few days ago here. And aside that, he mobilized and ensured that he supported the movement from the Nigerian army. It was a joint, work together. What do you take of this latest story? Is it starting to pay off, and what can we learn from the way the governor is pushing? Well, let's take this caller.
Okay.
Sorry. We do have
Emeka, thank you very much. Join us. Good morning.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, sir. Please, I want to contribute to the program. The problem we are having in this country is INEC and our judiciary. That's the problem that we are having. Since the demand and win the election, they did not give in to the election. They now carry another person and give him the winner. And there is nothing that can work in the country. If a sincere person that is not sit on that seat, you understand? If a sincere person is not sitting on that seat, there is nothing that can work.
Okay, I'm watching Arise AIT this morning. I saw one man, they say is APC word, and one analyst. They called two of them together. The APC man was talking what Tinubu has done, But the other man was giving analysis, how things is working. You understand? The other APC man was just giving us stories. Things are not done like that, you understand? And if they want to bring somebody that will speak to us on the television, let them bring people that will give us analysis. Like the way the man in the other in the studio is giving us analysis, you understand? So that we can try to understand what they are saying. Thank you, sir.
All right, Emeka. I mean, I wouldn't want to fault that. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and that's another platform. So that's not our.
I want to take the two stories together. That's the politics and the Borno issue. I think the prof in Borno is doing a yeoman's job. You'll recall that even when he came to our studio, he was talking of, going to those villages to sleep. And one of the days he was coming back from stories, his convoy was attacked. Thank God he was not in that convoy. So that has given him enough reason why he should do something.
And he's seeing things firsthand.
Yes. Very, very serious. So the assistance is given to the military is a welcome development. But the military complained that they don't have enough ammunition to attack these people. And the federal government is paying lip service to that. So I think the governor should continue to use his security votes to do something for the military so that we can get this done. And please, 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 those repentant Boko Haram should not be recruited to the army again. Please, 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 please. I don't know who is listening. Please, please, please. You cannot debrief somebody for just 3 months and recruit the person to your force. It's not done. There are the people that are giving intel to their people out there to ambush the military. So we should stop that. Now, the issue of the political parties. I can tell you for free that INEC is not doing what it's supposed to do. The judiciary is worse. Let me explain what I mean. Now, PDP went to court and they were asking for the court to determine who is the secretary of the party. Now, the Supreme Court said they should go home. There's a political affair. They should go home and resolve their issues. Now, they came and resolved their issues. And INEC is supporting the person they said, no, it's not the person we want. So what are we saying? So you can see that when they are crying that the party in power has a hand in what is happening in their political parties, you can see it playing out. Because INEC chairman is an appointee of the president. And that's why people are clamoring that the INEC chairman should not be appointed by the president. Because he who pays the piper dictates the tone. I cannot appoint you and you go against me. It will not happen. I will remove you the next day.
Well noted. It's a conversation that's actually on the Daily Times. You find that story,
Yes.
You find it on the, I think, yes.
Yeah, Daily Times.
Is it Daily Times? The Punch. Rather than the front page of the Punch.
There's a story.
Let's stay on the Daily Times. Yes, go ahead.
Still on the Daily Times. EBAS to defend Rivers budget before joint National Assembly Committee. This is a sole administrator that has a 6-month mandate, and we're drawing closer to the end with each passing day. What do you make of this? And are the people of Rivers State going to be missing out on governance of some sort? Because, I mean, he didn't campaign. It doesn't have the popular mandate of the people. So this budget, what sort of details are we expecting in this budget? Is it just for statutory allocations to pay salaries? Can he participate in, can he do infrastructure projects and out of that? Because this is an anomaly which we don't see.
Did you recall that from the time you started reading that, I was laughing? Why? And do you know why I was laughing?
Why?
It was the president that presented a budget to the National Assembly.
Yes.
And in presenting the budget to National Assembly, he said Abuja is not a state. Therefore, the FCT minister cannot present the budget. it is him that will present the budget. Now, recall to 2023 election. What Supreme Court said, that Abuja should be taken as the 37 states. They said that and is no longer a conjunction. They developed a new dictionary. The and is no longer a conjunction. You can read it as the same. Now it's coming to play out. The president, the same president that they gave the mandates, is now telling us that Abuja is not a state. So Nigeria is a scam. Nigeria is a scam. Because how can, which day was that? Just 2023 elections, and the Supreme Court, how many times did I say that?
3 times.
Came out to tell us that Abuja should be considered as a state. And the president is telling us that Abuja is not a state. So how do you reconcile that?
No, but this,
how do you reconcile that?
This issue of the president.
No, because that's where, we want to tackle it from the roots. Now, he has presented the budget, and a man that does not know a jack about how this budget was, because naturally it is the, what do you call them now? The MDAs, the agencies that are supposed to bring what they want for the year that will now be compiled to form a budget. Now, are they telling me that all those agencies brought that and gave to the administrator or whatever? No, what is the administrator coming to defend? No, tell me what is coming to defend. You see, when some of these things happen, what
about the governance component of it? The ordinary people of Rivers State, will they still feel the impact of governance?
Are they feeling the impact of governance now? You see, the essence of creating an administrator in Rivers State was they hijacked the funds of Rivers State.
Why do you say so? That's a strong allegation there.
I can say that without mincing words. The reason is that if you check, even if you check why Wike has not been sanctioned by PDP, was because he was the person funding PDP for a very long time. So they find it difficult to sanction him. Now, the essence of trying to ensure that they capture Rivers State is because of the funds that Rivers State has. Apart from Lagos, Rivers State is the most buoyant state in Nigeria. So it is that fund that is creating the crisis in Rivers State, nothing else. They've had their hands on it. Don't forget that the 400 and something billion that they said the former governor should not spend has been spent, because I released to the current administrator. What has he achieved? Has he commissioned any projects? 400 and something billion, nobody's accounting for that.
He's paid salaries.
He's paying salaries. He's the only person paying salaries in the world. No other person is paying salaries. So we came to pay salaries.
It says he's working.
No, he's appointed to just pay salaries.
And the state is peaceful.
Yeah.
I hear you. You can say that again. You read a report now of a kidnap in a state that is peaceful. A school child was kidnapped, and they are speaking in tongues. Somebody has been arrested. The person gave his what do you call it, statement, and he was advised not to sign the statement. And that's a state that is peaceful. I hear you. Can go ahead.
I would like for us to look at Daily Times once again. It seems, the other newspapers have a lot of adverts right in front.
As we approach the 2-year anniversary.
Yes, celebration has started already.
The president.
I think let's focus on that. Yes. Tomorrow, the president will mark 2 years in office.
Yeah.
We do have 3 minutes to go before we call it a wrap.
Okay.
3 minutes plus. How would you dissect the president's position as president, as the number one citizen of Nigeria, and how would you, score
in terms of
the good, bad, and the ugly?
2 years in office. Let's start with the good.
Yes.
Well,
let's start with the positive.
I want to refer to him. He inherited a very bad economy. But when he came in, he made some costly mistakes, which later on he started retracing his steps. To be fair to him, he has not done so badly. I want to be fair to him. He has not done so badly, but he needs to do more. The loans he's taking now, for me, is a no-no. For me, it's a no-no. Because if we say we have been saving from subsidy removal, then going to take so much loan. Look at it. You took in dollars, you took in euro, you took in yuan, you are taking domestic debt, domestic loans again. Now, these loans, what are you going to do with them? Are there specific projects that you have named and you have calculated what is going to take you to do this project before you take these loans? Or you're just taking loans for the sake of taking loans? Because at the end of the day, we will not see where these loans will go to. That's my fear, that these loans might be geared towards 2027. That is my fear. And this palpable fear can be justified because of what is going on in the political arena today. Everybody wants to be silenced, and everybody wants to belong to, and he has told us that it's not wrong to have a one-party state. But I can tell you for free, it is wrong for Nigeria to have a one-party state, because it's a multicultural, multi-dimension, multi-economic nation. It's not a nation that you just come with one political party and there be no opposition. No, things will go wrong. Because we have opposition now and things are going wrong. Then when you don't have opposition at all, what will happen?
The opposition is, they have their own crisis too.
No, they have their own crisis, and I've told you here that the crisis is being furthered by the political party in power. The Wike instant is one. You can see what INEC said now. After Supreme Court have said that they should go home, is a political party affair. They should go home and resolve their problem. And the political party have resolved their problem. And INEC is saying no. The person they said should be their secretary is not supposed to be their secretary. So what are we saying?
So tomorrow, the president celebrates 2 years in office. We've passed, he's taken those bold decisions, unification of the exchange rate, and also removal of fuel subsidy. And the president's advisors and minders said, you know, these painful decisions will begin to see the fruits and the benefits of it. What are your expectations?
That's what we thought.
For the next 2 years.
That's what we thought.
So we passed the teaching stage.
We thought that the decisions he took, though very stringent, that they will yield results. But with the respect of loans that we are taking now, I'm afraid the results these things will yield. Because what we expected was that we are looking inwards. That was why he took those painful decisions. And we believe that with those painful decisions, that in the next 3-4 years, they'll begin to yield results. But when you are now compounding the problem by taking loans here and there, how are you going to pay back these loans?
But the loans are going to...
They're going to help the economy.
To spur the economy.
I mean, one of it, offsetting a huge...
Oh, sorry. This is the first time we're taking loans. The one that Buhari took, what did he use it for?
Buhari and Tinubu are different people. So,
although in the same house,
we have to give them the benefit of doubt.
The ones PDP took before Buhari, what did we use them for? You see, let's not fool ourselves here. We know the truth, because the problem of Nigeria economy has been that we take loans for consumption. We don't take loans for developmental projects. Go down the lane during the time of IBB, when we took loan for what is it called again? And there were 4 countries or 3 countries that took loans with us then. You have India, you have Brazil, and one other country. Go and see what they did with that loan. What did they do with their own? It was shared. That's the problem.
No, but Buhari administration, Second Niger Bridge, and also the rail infrastructure.
Has Second Niger Bridge been completed?
And the renovation of the airport.
Yeah.
You traveled recently and you saw the beautiful airports.
Yeah, I saw the beautiful airport, and the senator is saying that we should go and demolish all the buildings very close to the airport.
In Abuja.
Because in Abuja.
It's an eyesore.
It's an eyesore. So those people that own those buildings are not Nigerians.
Senator Onwabwe.
You see, when they get there, they begin to say things that you begin to wonder if they brought from heaven. We had a minister in this country who later became a Senate president that told us that telephone is not for the poor. It's something that
maybe he must have seen the future, because truly, telephone right now is not for the poor. It's expensive to get a mobile device.
Who says so?
Thank you so much,
there
Professor.
There are phones.
All right, let's go straight to which way Nigeria. I think that brings that to us right now.
Fellow Nigerians, lend me your ears, or maybe your calculators too. Our President Bola Tinubu, has written to the National Assembly asking for approval to borrow nearly $24 billion from external creditors over the next 2 years. That's $21.5 billion, 2 billion euros and 15 billion yen to fund infrastructure, health, agriculture, and yes, to improve the livelihoods of the average Nigerian. But wait, which average Nigerian? Because the ones I know are tired, overworked, underpaid, or unemployed entirely. Let's be clear, Nigeria is not new to borrowing. Every administration promises the same thing. We will borrow responsibly to fund critical sectors, yet all we see are abandoned projects and inflated contracts. Let's do the maths. This borrowing plan is 2/3 the size of our national budget, which currently stands at $36.4 billion. And remember, that budget was benchmarked on the crude oil selling at $75 per barrel, but oil is now trading at $60.92. How do you plan a budget on a dream when reality is knocking? We're still a mono economy. Over 80% of our export earnings come from crude oil. But instead of aggressively diversifying, we're borrowing more to survive a global oil slump. And who do we blame? US tariffs or OPEC, or our own inability to cost waste, grow non-oil exports, and reform tax administration? We keep talking about the future, but we're mortgaging it in advance. Our children and their children are already being born with debt chains on their ankles. Nigeria's total public debt over the last count was over 97 trillion naira. Now we want to add more with no guarantee of execution. Just vibes. And do we continue down this path of endless borrowing, or do we finally demand transparency, fiscal discipline, and a results-based approach to governance? If we don't wake up, we will soon be a nation that spends more on debt servicing than on healthcare, education, or security. Oh wait, we're already doing that. The answer, as always, is in your hands and in your voices. Wake up, Nigeria. The debt clock is ticking. Good morning, Nigerians.
Very interesting one there. The debt clock is ticking. How much more are we going to borrow? And like they say, are we a consuming nation or a productive one? If you compare Nigeria to China, like many of the thought leaders have done, especially some of the politicians, Nigerians have asked, well, don't just compare, but ensure that you tabulate, or like one of my teachers would say, tabulate, and look at it carefully so that you can vis-a-vis look at what China is doing and what we aren't doing, even though we have the natural resources. Professor Anna, it's so good to have you here once again. Thank you so much for spending time with us here on Breakfast Central, having looked at the papers very clearly. But tomorrow, your final word to Mr. President as he marks his second year in office. Just your final word.
Well, Mr. President, remember the masses, that at least some of them that voted for you in power. And your projects should be that you have legacy projects, that by the time you leave, people will remember you for what you have done, not what you have not done. We should be thinking of leaders today that will be examples to follow, not mistakes to be avoided. Thank you.
All right. Well done. Anyway, we do have a special tomorrow here on Breakfast Central. We would be having a review and, most importantly, a scorecard edition 3 hours with very incisive conversation and very excellent guests that would be joining us live here in the studios to look at the scorecard of President Bola Tinubu's second year in office. Make sure you tune in same time tomorrow. It starts at 7 all the way to 10 a.m. West African time. Olive, myself, and of course Benga will be here to do justice to that. Yeah. And maybe along the line, if we need to take a phone call or a conversation as an in-swinger, we might have Professor Honor, swinging and drop 1 or 2 beats. It's been a fantastic show. Thank you so much for watching Breakfast Central today. And we'll see you again tomorrow on this special edition of Assessing and also looking at the scorecard of President Bola Tinubu's second year in office. I am Joe Hansen.
Thank you for being a part of the broadcast. I am Benga Bora. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.